Good afternoon. My name is Patience Ibowe. I am presenting the human factor theory based on the Granville history and current problem. Before I start presenting my theory, which is Herzberg theory, but I would like to give a brief history of Granville engineering. Granville engineering, according to the case study, has been in operation for 90 years, and it has always prided itself with partnership with his employee during the 90 years of operation. Granville engineering have more than 1,250 staff, and they have various locations in different places. And, and also going back to the case study, Granville has never had they've never have a union, um, so they've always operated as a big family corporation. So we're going to be going back to the motivational factors that motivate employee, and factors that triggers dissatisfaction based on the Herzberg theory. According to the case study on Granville history and current problem, the company has prided itself in providing generous benefit, including profit sharing program. This can be found in page one. Like I've said on my introduction, that they see themselves as a big a big family. I choose Herzberg two-factor theory because looking at the case study and looking at all the theories that we are given, I personally feel that Herzberg two-factor theory fit into the human behavior uh, concept that is happening in Grantsville. In Grantsville, in his theory, Herzberg reveals that certain characteristics of job satisfaction are actually consistent or related to job satisfaction, and also job what motivate employee associated with that what gives employee satisfaction can be traced back to motivational factors. Those are factors that actually motivate employee, and these motivational factor are intrinsic. That means they the intrinsic factor includes recognition, achievement, advancement, and also growth. But those factors which are intrinsic, which it comes from external factors, has to do with organizational policy. I will be looking at what was the policy of Granville before TES brought over Granville that triggers the human factor behavior. Also, going back to the hygiene factor, based on Herzberg theory, we're looking at the hygiene factor, which is organizational policy. We're looking at the work condition. We're looking at job security. Also, we're looking at benefit. We're looking at pay. We're looking at salary. The key here is we're looking at profit sharing, and also the interrelationship with organization or behavior. These are factors that are external, they are not intrinsic. So based on Herzberg two-factor theory, when these hygiene factors is implemented, this factor they result in they may result in employee satisfaction, but they will mitigate employee dissatisfaction. It does not necessarily mean that employee might not be dissatisfied, but it does mitigate those dissatisfaction theory. One will go back and look at the two culture policy. One, we're going to be looking at Grantsville policy. Also, we're going to be looking at uh, TES policies, and also we're going to be looking at factors that triggers the human behavior that uh, that brought about in the case study. So I have my chart. I decided to do my presentation with using Blackboard collaboration because I want to show my chart very well. Hopefully you guys are seeing it. So looking at my chart here, you're seeing examples of hygiene factors as I have mentioned. Um, that are extrinsic, which is external, and also looking at the motivational factor, which are intrinsic, which are something that employee recognize. It comes within. When employee saw that their company have recognition, they recognize them, they are motivated to work. And also when they look at the growth that they have advancement, they are motivated to work. So going back to my icon here, you see that when motivation factor, which is intrinsic, when it's in place, these factors increase employee motivation. It employee becomes committed to the organization, and also it increases employee satisfaction. But when you go back to the hygiene factor, you see when it's implemented, when they're in place, that it employee are satisfied, but that does not necessarily mean that they are not going to be dissatisfied, but it does reduces the dissatisfaction of employee. So based on Hesberg theory, I can say that job satisfaction and job dissatisfaction are really not opposite. The theory proposed that most factors that does contribute to job satisfaction are your motivational factor, which are these that according to the theory, these factors does contribute to employee satisfaction because they are intrinsic, while those that can actually mitigate employee dissatisfaction are the hygiene factor. These factors mitigate. It does not necessarily mean that it's going to stop it, but it does actually mitigate employee dissatisfaction. So also before I move forward, I would like to speak towards when you're looking at theory, you first of all want to see what is theory about. And also when you David Wilton 1989 proposed the four building block of theory, which is he called construct. So what are theory? Well, construct and proposition, logic, and boundary conditions. So when you look at construct, construct is actually explaining a single phenomenon. So what was the single phenomenon that actually happened in Granville? The single phenomenon that happened was that TES brought Grantsville that triggers the human behavior. And when you look at the second aspect of theory, looking at the proposition, which why is it that these concepts are related? These concepts are related because when you go back, when Granville was in existence, employees were motivated. But when TES bought over Grantsville, the organizational policy, which is intrinsic, actually was changed. Because when you look at the case study, it clearly says that the profit sharing was stopped because they decided not to share profit with employee again. And also um, the relationship with the employee was different because the Granville employees did not have that confidence in their new owner, which is TES. But when you go back and look at the motivational factor based on the case study, when Granville was there, they, because of the advancement, they know that they're going to grow, that they were motivated to work. They were motivated to work. So one can now say that the acquisition of Granville by TES actually resulted in the disappearance of the factors that actually does motivate Granville's employee, thus triggering the dissatisfaction of their job. One can see that in the outcome of their job production, as it was mentioned in the case study. According to Hesberg 1923 to 2000, he pointed to the fact that if hygiene factors are indicated, as I have mentioned in the next slide, where poor work condition, that would trigger job dissatisfaction. That can be found in page 3. Bachelard on his work in 2012, yeah, the one of the articles that we were asked to read titled "Theories in Scientific Research," he actually cited Baccarat 1989, who stated that theories are explanation of a natural or social behavior, event, or phenomenon. So going back, what was the phenomenon or the single event that triggers the human behavior at Granville? That I can logically say that it was due to the fact that Granville suspended profit sharing, and the motivation was no longer there, so that triggers the human behavior. So the single event that actually caused the human behavior as at Granville originated um, when TES bought Granville. Going back at looking at Hesberg theory, then I can assume as that should be the logical explanation on based on the based on these factors. Because if Ellsberg is saying that the things that motivate, the things that cause employee satisfaction and dissatisfaction are the hygiene factor and motivation factor, then one is bound to look at what happened when TES actually acquired Granville Engineering. Also going back to looking at what was the policies that were in place when GVE was the sole ownership of the company. The company policies uh, was in agreement with the employee, but when TS took over, then it becomes a problem because the policies were changed without the contribution the of the staff. Bachera, which is one of the articles that we read, cited Whitney of 1990, who explained the four building block of theory. Like I have said, that one is in page 23. Excuse me, page 26. It has to do with construct. So, what are the construct? Construct can be organizational policy. Construct can be organizational policy. So the policy change. So what is the proposition? Proposition are is it that why is it that the concept are related? The concept are related because when the organizational policy change from profit sharing, then we saw the human behavior factor. So logic and boundary condition. What is a logic and boundary condition? Um, Based on the Granville case study, boundary condition actually look at who, when, and where. Why is it that under what circumstances that the condition happened? So we're looking at who was affected. The Granville employees were affected, and where all this took over when TES bought Granville Engineering. So this next slide I'm going to be looking at, I've also talked about construct, but a construct is used to look at what happened. A construct is used to look at the concept that are important that actually explain a single phenomenon. Like I've said in the previous slide, the single phenomenon has to do with the organizational culture that triggers the human behavior, and employees were dissatisfied with the new organizational policy. So when I go back and look at the fourth aspect of a theory which deals with the logic and boundary condition of human behavior of Granville. So we're looking at why is it that the human behavior happen? What is the relationship between the construct or the proposition or the logic? What is the logic behind it? So it is therefore for me to logically say that the single explanation that I can give that trigger the human behavior resulted when TAS suspend cost sharing with employee. That's a single phenomenon that can be seen as the single predictor that caused the human behavior. The human behavior. Another logic explanation again, we see that TES, but uh, uh, when yeah. So after going through the history and going through the different theories that we have in Hesberg two-factor theory, as I have covered in my presentation, uh, one can now say that one can now say that the new uh, TES policies trigger the human factor behavior. An example would be like the town hall meeting that was held, that we saw the exchange of behavior in Granville meeting. Uh, Going through the case study and looking at the different looking at the two factors of Herzberg theory and looking at the case study, my recommendation as a DMG student would be: one is communication. I've said in my recommendation that they need communication. One will be interpersonal and intrapersonal. This can be achieved in a different way. I'll first of all start with inter interpersonal relationship, because when you have interpersonal relationship with your employee through communication, you can see those non-verbal clues that um, that you can tell, even though they are not saying it, but you can tell from their body movement that that's what is going on. This process allows the exchange of communication between two or more people. So you're looking at verbal and non-verbal clues. Also, you're looking at face expression. Also, you're looking at the emotional state. The emotional state, an example would be like the yelling in the town hall meeting. So when you have a good communication process in place, this mitigates or reduce the outcome of the town hall meeting. How can this can be achieved? This can be achieved through suggestion boards or survey. TES have acquired Grantsville. The truth is that corporations are there to maximize profit. So in that case, they have like a suggestion box and they have like a survey that is so a suggestion box will make employees to write they are what they're thinking about. The truth is that TES has acquired Granville, so the culture is going to change. But if you explain the reason why profits are not going to be shared anymore, because of, we can see from the case study that uh, after the acquisition of GVE by TES, they bought some more, and also the other shareholders, where they gained a total control of interest. So in the subsequent years, we saw that there was a 2% drop, which led the next one was 5% drop, and the next one was 8% drop. So there was no way they could continue to share profit. So my recommendation would be that they should lay out the organizational paper or the organizational report on their profit. So based on that, when employees are able to see that they are losing so much money because of the economic at that time, then employees are willing to collaborate with the organization. That means GVE employees will be able to collaborate based on the plain paper that's in front of them. That means there's going to be an acceptance, because they know that the employees sees them as a partner, but not as a tool. So based on that, I think if they have interpersonal and intrapersonal communication, that can trigger collaboration and also bring an acceptance. Also, what can be achieved from the communication can be a consensus. A consensus, that means you can also ask the employee to bring a solution. They are losing money, so what solution do they have if the profit is going to be suspended and other benefits are going to be stopped? So what is their solution? So based on that, on the suggestion box or on the survey, employee can have their own contribution. You can also have like unstructured or structured survey. Unstructured survey might be, do you agree that profit should be shared, suspended, yes or no? Or explain why you think we should continue to, how do you feel about the suspend profit sharing? So based on that, when it's being collected accumulatively, then I think there's going to be a collaboration from all stakeholders, and also there's going to be an acceptance. My second recommendation is try to get a champion. A champion can be the project manager, or it can be a leader. A leader actually is someone that somebody actually, a leader is someone that people respect, because they believe that a leader will have their best interest in heart. So Granville Engineering and TVS have to look for who is the best person to play this role that will allow uh, employee to get a buy-in. Buy-in means that they accept the new policy. They're losing money. They need to find new ways to improve our product. So, but they need a leader that will be able to sell the fact that benefit is going to be suspended, profit share is going to be stopped. So if they're able to have a good leader that can do that, then employee motivation is is still going to be there. So they're not going to have like the misassembly line shortage, the high turnover rate. They're not going to have that, because employee now understand, based on the communication that they've already have, that this is what is going on. But they have to look for a leader that can do that for them. Another good one of a leader that they need to that I'm going to have as one of my recommendations is a leadership that actually exhibit participation style. That means that you bring employee into consideration. That's what a leader does. A leader is different from a manager. A manager is there to carry out the policy or the procedure of the company, but a leader is here there to work with employee, to have employees' opinion or point of view. So based on that, when they do that, employee will see themselves as a stakeholder of the company, but not as an object, as it was done in the case study. Based on my previous slide, we're looking at um, a champion. To get a champion, like I've said, a champion needs to be a leader. Needs to be a leader. And the reason I have the project manager here, that's the project manager that later became the CE, the CMO that later became one of the managers, because he was well respected by the assembly line staff. Then he might be a good leader. So doing when you have a champion, it triggers a buy-in and also a recognition. People recognize the problem and they are able to work with the company. My third recommendation for Granville Engineer would be bring all stakeholders on board. So who are the stakeholders? We have the community, we have the staff, which include the line workers, the staff, the manager, and the executive. Stakeholders are individuals that has invested interest. They have invested interest in the company. So when all stakeholders are brought in place, and the situation of the company is being forwarded to them, or everyone saw what Granville Engineering, now TS, is going through, because they are seen as a stakeholder, then that will bring an achievement. That's go back to the motivational factor. it will bring growth. It goes back to the motivational factor. Work condition and security and job security, we go back to motivational factor. Then interpersonal relation, it goes back to the hygiene factor. So graphic engineering need to implement this recommendation in order to improve staff relationship with their staff. These are my references. I basically use all the journals and articles that was given in project one. My first article is Batashare, 2012, Theories in Science and Research and Social Research. That's my first reference. My second reference is actually the Grantsville History and Current Problem that was actually given to us. Yeah, this is my second reference. I read the case study and abstract the the single concept that was in that triggers the human behavior. I also have my I also use the human factor, organizational behavior, human resources that was given to us in project one. Then I also have the my last reference is the editor's comment, which was quite explanatory because it does explain the human behavior of by using theory, the why of theory. So we have the two-factor theory by Hesberg. So the why of theory. So that's one of my reference that I did use. Just to give a, just want to show back my graphic map and my graphic chart. This is the human factor concept graphic. These are the hygiene factors. I have my organizational policies. I have my work condition, job security, salary, profit sharing. My explanation is that when it's been implemented, these factors actually result in employee satisfaction. But that does not mean that there's not going to be dissatisfaction, but it does mitigate employee dissatisfaction. And also the motivational factor, which is intrinsic, again, advancement, growth. So when in place, it does increase employee motivation, it increase communication with organization, it also increase employee satisfaction, which are all the things that GVE and TES actually need in order to reduce the dissatisfaction of their employee at Granville. I hope mm, I hope I've been able to present the key concept of the human factor at Granville Engineering. These are all my references. Please, if you have any question, you can send that to me through pebuwe@capping.edu or t.sanders@yahoo.com. You can also post your question to me on the discussion board. Thank you so much for listening.